Every day, you wake up as your own boss, making your own way. Every day, you continue your journey to change the world, your team, and yourself. Every day, you encourage, congratulate, celebrate, and reach toward your goal of being the best and providing the best. The Build Your Best Business Show is for you. The real stories of building a business from other owners and founders along the journey. Find the support and advice you need to successfully start, grow, manage, and exit your business. What are you going to do today to build your best business?
Welcome to Build Your Best Business. I'm your host, Eric Holtzclaw. Build Your Best Business focuses on the entrepreneurial journey. What does it take to successfully start, manage, grow, and eventually exit a business? Today, we are talking to someone who is old Atlanta, and I'm not referring to his age. Heck of a way to start an interview, right?
Old Atlanta. You're the first person ever to refer to me as old Atlanta.
I'm old Atlanta, so,
yeah.
I can say that. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe in my background. How long have you been in Atlanta?
11 and a half years.
Okay, maybe you're not so old Atlanta.
Not so old Atlanta.
Okay, I'm old Atlanta.
Yeah.
Been here my entire career, the whole thing.
Right.
So anyway, Berry Etra. It was just a fun way to say it because, I knew I'd get a look.
I knew eventually I'd be a native. This is good.
Yeah. Okay, well, I still don't count it. My wife's been here since she was like 13 or 14, and I still tell her, yeah, not really. Doesn't count yet. So anyway, so he is with Keiretsu Forum Atlanta. Did I pronounce that right?
Yeah.
Which is a new thing for you because I know you in a different way and a different light. So tell us a little bit about that and how it's different. And
well, the good thing is it dovetails right into what I've been doing up to now.
Okay.
What I've been doing in the main is running the Raise Forum at Emory.
Okay.
Again, matching up Southeast companies early stage with the best investors in the Southeast.
Yeah.
Keiretsu does what we do on steroids. Keiretsu is the largest and the most active and funds the most companies of any angel group in the world.
Wow.
They only have a few chapters in the East Coast, so they're fairly unknown here yet.
Okay.
But there's
because I was going to say I hadn't really heard of them, so it's primarily because they're not on the East Coast that much.
No, and when I started the Raise Forum, I went to the Keiretsu site to see what they did because I had heard they were the best at this.
Okay.
They are really all about the investor. How do you create a setup where the investors can invest what they want, when they want, and they bring the kind of deal flow that you don't see anywhere else because their due diligence is second to none. They do not cut corners there.
Okay.
So the Keiretsu Forum's philosophy and the Raise Forum philosophy is pretty close.
Pretty close.
Yeah, Raise it's the same types of companies, although Raise will not do pre-revenue and Keiretsu will.
Okay.
And Keiretsu has much more power than our Raise Forum does. They also will bring in some companies from outside the area.
Okay. So talk to me. You talk about the due diligence and what they do. Talk to me about that. Like, how is it different? And this whole landscape of where to go and how to get connected for an entrepreneur new, even if they've been around for a while, because it seems to change. It's confusing. Like, where should I go first? Who should I talk to? What should that look like?
Well, Keiretsu has several advantages for the company. If you're a company, first of all, it's free to apply. If you make it through the first round, you get a second round. You actually do a little pitch to a group of people who understand this stuff. Then if you get through that round, now you're asked if you want to go into due diligence. There's a very small cost to due diligence, but it's there. But it's a 6 to 8 week process. They do not skimp. Their due diligence process is so good that other angel groups all over the country have started to copy it and borrow it.
Okay.
I would say that in many cases they do much better due diligence than venture firms.
Yeah. I've
Right.
been involved in some of that, so
Right.
I would probably agree with that.
So they for that reason, once you get in there, you are not quite a slam dunk to be funded. Last year, 42 companies made it through the due diligence on the East Coast. 37 got funding from Keiretsu.
Those are good
So
odds.
that's pretty good.
Yeah.
And the great advantage, as far as I'm concerned, for the companies is that besides the recognition and all of that, and the help that Keiretsu could bring, if you get funded in one Keiretsu chapter, you can then go on a road show.
Oh, wow.
And go anywhere else in the country that Keiretsu is. And the due diligence goes with you, so you don't have to do that again.
Yeah.
And you can now point, we got 300,000 from the Southeast, we got 800,000 from the Mid-Atlantic, and it's a very compelling way to really pyramid what you can get.
Interesting. Okay. So how did you get connected? You said you looked at them, but I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean you would become, part of the fold.
I've been passionate about getting more money for Southeast companies for a long time, as you know.
Yes.
And I've been doing this with Raise Forum and trying to work within the ecosystem here to get better situations, make it better, and have an unbroken path all along the line. Keiretsu came into, I think they tried once up here, but this is not yet the nerve center of Atlanta.
Up here, meaning our studios are in Alpharetta. Yeah,
Alpharetta.
A little bit north of Atlanta.
Yeah, I guess I should have mentioned that.
No worries.
And
that's why I'm here.
Right.
That's really actually the only reason I'm here.
Right. You're the compass.
Right.
Anyhow, it wasn't the right fit. So they finally decided, oh, gee, there's a lot more activity in Buckhead and Midtown.
Got it.
So they came into Buckhead. Morrison, Manning, and Martin became their host sponsor, and they asked the people there who should run it, and the first person they said was I.
Well, that's nice.
And that's how it happened. And it really is good in a way because both the Raise Forum and Keiretsu dovetail. It's the same group of investors, in most of the cases, the same kinds of companies.
Got it. And you were saying, you talked about something that I'd like to unpack a little bit about, the unbroken line. So when you say that, what do you mean by the unbroken line?
A true entrepreneurial ecosystem has resources from the earliest of the early on forward. The hardest part, I think, is probably the seed funding, especially in the life science world. And then the angel rounds, and then up to venture, and then finally, once you get past a certain size, you can talk to private equity.
Okay.
But you have to be at 10 million in sales and a couple of million in EBITDA before they'll even talk to you, truthfully.
Right.
The angel part is the hardest part, and the early stage is the hardest part to get funding for.
And why?
And why? Because it's the riskiest.
Okay.
And you're also a little farther from showing the kind of advancement that you would show otherwise. That you don't have the sales growth necessarily at this point. You don't necessarily have the user growth necessarily at that point.
Okay. All right.
So this stage is the best stage from the investor's point to get in too.
All right.
I mean, early stage, but that's very, very risky.
Yeah.
This is just risky, but if you can get enough due diligence done by experts, you can de-risk a lot of that.
Yeah, and that is such an important part I see it skipped often or not done well, at least in some of the parts of it. If you do the due diligence, you know what you're doing. It's like buying a house and not having it inspected.
Right.
And then you get in and you're like, oh, wow, that's not working and this is not working. But if you just had an inspection done, you would know those things.
Right. And Keiretsu utilizes expert members, other members who want to get involved. They also utilize universities. So they have university partners, and I've asked several universities in town to be partners, where the business school students can get involved on the early side, especially law students. Law students are critical because why?
Well, it would be intellectual property and some of those things?
Every law student has a free subscription to Lexis.
Oh, okay.
So they can check out the real due diligence all the way up and down the line.
Got it.
And
what about Westlaw? That's still a thing?
Well,
Westlaw?
I don't know.
LexisNexis,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
I worked with Westlaw back in the day.
I'm going with the generic term since I don't know. I don't know what's correct. Yeah. So that's what they do that because that's really the key.
Okay.
Really, if you're doing your homework to the nth degree, you have a much better success rate. And we have a little bit of a history of not doing as good a job here.
Right. Okay.
Right.
Yeah. And so when a company is considering this, talk to me about the cycle. So how often are you running these due diligence?
All right. So Raise Forum was basically a nonprofit that Emory helped us with, and we run every 6 months. But Keiretsu is going to meet every month.
Oh, okay.
They probably see in the East Coast about 40 companies a month through the big funnel, The smaller funnel narrows that down to about 15. Then perhaps...
So you have some 40 to 15. So it's pretty competitive to get from the first funnel to the second.
Right. And then you end up with around 3 or 4 a month right now to go through due diligence. No corners cut in that process. The good news is I think Atlanta can increase that somewhat dramatically. We have a lot of companies here, a lot of good companies, and many of them don't know this exists. So I am now, once again, preaching the gospel. This is around. It costs nothing to apply. It does cost. I get a little bit of feedback here because there is some negative connotation around what people call pay to play or pay to pitch.
Right.
And my argument has been, look, this is not like spending 5 or 6 hours. You're spending 6 to 8 weeks doing due diligence. If you did that professionally, it would cost $50,000.
Right.
Companies are getting charged about $1,500 a city.
Oh, wow.
All right. So it's a pretty small number.
Well, and even having that level of so having someone go through it and look at it for that level is helpful, right?
Yes.
Because you end up knowing what's right and wrong about your business,
question.
where the gaps are. And the reason why someone doesn't make an investment is just as important as someone deciding to make the investment, right?
Yeah, you end up with a better as a better company on the other side anyway.
Yeah. And so the due diligence process, say taking that 6 to 8 weeks, are they meeting with different professionals who know those categories, or is there some kind of just standard process they're following?
I can't tell you. I'm sure it's different for everyone.
Okay.
I wish I could tell you more about it, but we haven't run a due diligence down here yet. In fact, we won't until we build up the membership.
Got it. Okay.
Right now, it's still being done, I think, in Mid-Atlantic.
Yeah. All right. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Very, very cool. And so you're really at the beginning you're sort of a startup for a startup kind of thing. Yes.
Right. But it's a proven model. It's been around for 17 years. They've done just short of $1 billion worth of funding. This is an angel group now. The second largest angel group in the world is Tech Coast Angels.
Okay.
They do about $20 million a year in funding.
Wow.
Keiretsu did 72 last year.
Okay.
Keiretsu is just has so much more bulk, and again, you were allowed to cross the lines.
Yeah.
So if you're an investor, you can go look at any deal in the Keiretsu system if you're interested. And as a company, you can increase what you've gotten by going around to different chapters. There's one great example in Philadelphia that was a pharma company that got a couple of $1 million initially and then started to do a road show. They raised $23 million from Keiretsu.
Oh, wow.
Over a year and a half, I think.
Well, that makes sense because you have different investors in different regions who are familiar with the different industries or types, and you may have started something here, but your investors or the people who understand it could be somewhere else. And
Right.
so getting to them in a way so that you can get the money, you may still leave it here. It's just that you have that influence from other people who understand it.
And also, we want to build up our ecosystem,
Right,
period.
right.
And if we can get most of the senior funding without even having to go to venture from Keiretsu, company doesn't have to leave. The company will stay here.
Right.
And everybody benefits, I think.
Very nice, very nice.
All right.
Well, we're going to go to a commercial break, and when we get back, we'll talk a little bit about that, kind of like how you're getting it into the market and what you see as companies kind of go through this process, maybe what they do well, what they don't do well, because that even knowing when I should come to you, what should I have before I even pick up the phone and say, hey, Barry, I heard about this great thing you're doing new. Now, when should I talk to you? So we're talking to Berry Etra. He is the president of Keiretsu Forum Atlanta. You're listening to Build Your Best Business. I'm your host, Eric Holtzclaw. We'll be back in just a minute. Congratulations, you're your own boss. Now comes the hard part. It's not just about starting a business, it's about successfully managing and growing that business to an eventual exit. And along that entrepreneurial journey, you're going to run into questions and problems that you need quick answers to. Things like, do you need a business plan? How do you read a balance sheet? How do you talk to an investor? When do you bring on a founder? Or what if you're having problems with your partner? These are the types of things that you run into as you're trying to grow that business to the next level, and they may not be the things you want to share in public with other people.
They're the problems and issues that arise that, as I have experienced along my own entrepreneurial journey, that I needed to have someone I could trust to reach out to and have a conversation and get a different perspective. And it was often those short conversations that would be the thing that moved me from where I was to where I needed to be. It's for that reason I created the On-Demand CXO product offering. On-Demand CXO is something that you can use to have a conversation with a trusted advisor about what's going on in your business. We do a 1-hour phone call to talk about your business, talk about your objectives, and understand what it's going to take to move you from where you are today to where you want to be tomorrow. From there, you have ongoing access to a Slack channel to ask me questions in private about what's going on in your business so that I can provide some advice or connections to my network to individuals who can help you solve against that problem. You will also have access to my Facebook page, which is full of other entrepreneurs who are along the same journey, to have more broad conversations, things that you trust and would talk about in a networking event. But when you need to go and have that conversation with a trusted advisor, you will have the ability to have a conversation with me in a place that's safe, completely anonymous, and unbiased. I want to see you succeed and build your very best business.
And we're back. You're listening to Build Your Best Business. I'm your host, Eric Holtzclaw. We're talking today with Berry Etra. He's a repeat offender on Build Your Best Business. Talked to him a couple times. He's the president of Keiretsu Forum Atlanta, which is a new role for him. He was raised Forum and, helps a lot in the ecosystem here in Atlanta to match companies with money, and which that experience is great because there's so many that don't understand how that works. Like that, you start a company and then all of a sudden, I got to go out and raise money, or I got to talk to an investor. That may be very foreign from what you meant to do when you went out.
And interesting, everything you read in the Atlanta Business Chronicle says what we need here is more senior funding.
Yeah.
Now, I maintain there are a couple of other things, but that is a big problem, and nobody seemed to be doing anything about it.
Right.
Which is how the Raise Forum started. And when I got contacted by Keiretsu, that's why I was excited, because the more we can bring in, the better everybody will do.
Absolutely.
And Keiretsu is very good about working with other groups, working together, syndicating.
And when you say other groups, you mean like other maybe investment groups that might be in the Atlanta market, or
Other investment groups is one. Universities, corporations. They're very good about saying, how do we put this all together to make this work? And the advantage we have down here is that they're somewhat flexible on everything but, say, the due diligence. So we can really do this right from the beginning.
Yeah.
And that's a big deal.
And during the break, you were talking a little bit about a lot of people think, investment equal tech company. That's not necessarily the case with Keiretsu, right?
No, Keiretsu does more technology than anything else. But they also do a surprisingly large amount of life science funding, and even some early stage life science funding, because that's the sweet spot for the investor. Those are their two big areas. They also do some consumer products, and they also do some financial products.
Okay.
But that's refreshing here because Atlanta is very, very tech-oriented.
Right. Okay. And so as I'm starting to think about where I go and what I do, there's a business plan, a pro forma, so talk to me about the list of things that I need to come up with.
I think you need a business plan, but that you kind of want to keep to yourself.
Okay.
The business plan is to help you get thinking about how you can now write a 2-page summary of what I really want to do. I'm very adamant about really being able to distill your business down to a good 2-page summary that answers the very important questions. And by the way, investors are looking for that as well. They want to know that you know exactly where you want to go. They want to know you can distill it down, and they want you to be able to answer questions on those points. The better you are at that, the farther you'll do. You can have a great... There are 1 million people every day sitting in rooms saying, this is the greatest thing that ever happened.
Right.
So that's the question is, how do you differentiate? How do you get somebody thinking, well, maybe this is?
Right.
And you can, if you're scaling it down to, hey, this is the greatest thing, in this market for this time of day, that's even better for an investor. Atlanta is different from the West Coast. West Coast is really more about big ideas. Atlanta is a lot more about how do you build a really great $5 to $10 million business.
Yeah, I was meeting with someone for breakfast or lunch one time, and I said, how much revenue do you have, or how much revenue do you plan on generating, or whatever? And he said, that's such an East Coast question. And I said, well, what do you mean? And he said, well, on the East Coast, you investors, business people focus on what's the revenue that should be generated, those types of things. On the West Coast, it may be more about how many users do you have, it's a very just different models people use for evaluating whether or not a deal is good.
Well, users are essentially like revenue because every user has a value. Mm-hmm. West Coast has a tendency to look for the unicorns, and everybody underneath is kind of, well, that's interesting, but that's not what we're shooting for.
Right.
Yeah, we're going to have some. We have some already, but this is essentially a real estate town, mm-hmm. and people like to think of, how do I know you can get there? How do I know it's very hard to envision somebody plodding along and then going boom.
Right, yeah.
It's, there is a lot more money on the West Coast, and we've talked about that. There's a lot more money but in 3 places in the country. They're the ones who have the most money, and 80% of all money is 3 places.
Wow.
So everybody else is in 4th place, right. For lack of any other way to put it.
Right. So what are some of you're out talking and making the rounds? What are some of your other first steps? Like, when do you want to start running your first round of this, and what does the plan look like for you?
We had an expository meeting 2 weeks ago today.
Okay.
And that was oversubscribed. People were pretty enthusiastic. The next one will be September 20th. Again, it's by invitation only. What I really want to see there are people who want to get involved seriously, either as investors or sponsors or people who want to be partners. We have a limited number of space, right. But I also want to get members in as soon as possible. So I'm trying to play the game between trying to be inviting and trying to zero in at the same time.
Yeah, and you've used the word members a couple times, and so I'm not sure that so to tell us what you mean by member.
It's like many other angel groups, like the angel groups in town already. There's one cost per year, $3,000 a member.
Okay. That's
your only cost, though. Keiretsu doesn't take any part of the deal, doesn't take any percentage of any company, none of that. The only cost is the $3,000 a year. That also gets you access to the online portal where you can look at every deal all over the world.
Got it.
So it's pretty simple. My sense is if you invest $50,000 a year minimum, which encompasses a lot of people, it's a very simple equation.
Yes.
You're going to see more companies and better companies.
Much more qualified. They've
right.
done, some of the work's been done for you, so
right.
you can trust it.
Yeah. Right. All of the work. It's not just you telling me, hey, I know a great company.
Right.
Yeah. I know a great company, and here's the book of what we've done to establish that that's true.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's that
right.
Seeing a piece of property and already knowing you got the comps and you're getting a good deal on it.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's reasonable enough that if you belong to another group in town, you're still not spending a lot of money. And you'll see a lot of different companies. And you'll also see those companies that go on the road shows that are coming from different areas who have gotten money from Keiretsu and now want to get money from other places. Many of the angel investors only want to invest locally.
Yeah. But
I think will be 70 or 75% of what we see anyway.
Yeah.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit about that. So the Atlanta has had an interesting 3 to 5 years. We've had some major brands move in and establish headquarters here, really put a big, toenail in the South. We've also had the entertainment industry has started to blossom. Because you've been with Raise Forum and you sort of see it on the side of investment and what that means from an ecosystem perspective. Has that been impactful and helped us get companies move forward, or is it really just noise around the kind of startup community?
I think it definitely has. We're getting more and more of the easy part in some ways. We're getting the activity, we're getting the companies, we're getting the other groups who are interested in the world moving in. We're still struggling with ensuring that we keep companies here. Okay. We're doing more and more. I have to say there are multiple group endeavors going on right now. One of them is called Endeavor, in fact. One of them is called Engage. One of them is, Techstars. Mm-hmm. A lot of these have been the involvement of one specific company, Cox Enterprise. They've
Okay.
been fantastic. Georgia Tech has a years-long lead on anybody else in entrepreneurship on the university side, but the others, Kennesaw State, Emory, Georgia State, are catching up fairly quickly,
Yeah.
which is good. I mean, I don't think they're going to be anywhere near the size of Tech anywhere soon, but
Yeah.
at least they are all, and they're looking at other things.
Yeah.
So it's not just one very slight sliver of the world.
Yeah.
When-
The world is so different. I was here in the 90s doing startups, and I was too naive to know that no one was doing startups in Atlanta.
There used to
90s.
be T-shirts that said, "Sig said no." That's what the T-shirt said.
Yeah. And
Because he was the only game in town.
and ATDC, I went, and it was
Yeah.
a 12 companies were in
Mhm.
ATDC in like this little strip center over off
Yeah.
one of, like near the Silver Skillet or the Lucky Skillet, whatever the thing's called. So it's
Silver
a
Skillet.
very different world now.
No,
compared
it's
to
just
then.
the tremendous amount of activity, and we have consumer products down with switch yards, and we've got a lot of up here in Alpharetta. I named it. There's a tremendous amount of software
Yeah.
activity going on. There are lots of places for people to go, and what we could use is some sort of community directory. That would be great.
Yeah.
I know one of the guys at Tech Square Labs has been trying to do that online quietly. You can sign up for free, and then anybody can go there and find it. There have been a couple other people, but nobody's really been able to do that. There is, as you said, a lot of noise out there.
Yeah, and more every day. I mean, I'm plugged in, and I'll learn about a new, quote unquote, accelerator or incubator or something that has just opened or is new, and it's trying to keep up with where to go. And then it becomes, I think, for the person who's new to the ecosystem, confusing. Where do I go first? What fits for me? What makes sense?
When we started the Raise Forum, my partner is Charlie Getz, who teaches entrepreneurship
Yeah,
at Emory,
yeah.
and he wanted to do a full-blown incubator accelerator, and I had to rein him in a little bit. I said, Charlie, let's not reinvent the wheel.
Right.
We've got those.
Right.
Let's do something let's fill those gaps that aren't there. This is a big gap. This valley of death between $1 million and $5 million raise, that's where most companies go to die. We can help fill that. Kicker design on the early side.
Yeah.
Not only getting better designs, sometimes less expensive, but certainly bringing the speed of bringing a product to market, moving that up a lot.
Right.
Those are things that are different and better.
Yeah.
And there are lots of opportunity. There are plenty of opportunity out there.
So as you think about future, because you're in the middle of helping define that, so what are some of the things that you see that either we still need in our ecosystem or where we're headed from a market perspective?
I think we could use a little more diversity in what people get excited about in this town.
Okay.
Certainly it's easier to fund software than many other things because you have very little upfront cost. But that would bring in a whole different group of people
Yeah.
if we, say, became a products town.
Yeah.
Or if we became a B2C town also, on top of everything else. It would also help if more people started looking at angel investing as what it really is. According to my Keiretsu guru, he says, flat out, angel investing is the highest returning of any asset class there is.
Wow.
He threw out a number done right at about 27% a year. And that, I think, was a little bit of an eye-opener to some people.
Yeah.
So that's and of course, there are huge tax credits if you're an angel investor. So you get stuff on the other side, too. Pays to do it.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because when I do stories on the show, tech, I love the tech stories, but they're very similar in the paths they follow. When you get into manufacturing, some of these other things, the stories, like what the ecosystem has to be, how it has to be supported. There's a lot more challenge and a lot more opportunity in some of those spaces as well. So, yeah.
We've tried to go out of our way at the Raise Forum to look at the best companies, regardless of what space they're in. In fact, the last one, we actually had 2 consumer products. I don't think we've had one consumer product more than that in the whole history. So
Nice.
we're trying to figure out how to just pick the best companies, regardless of what they're doing.
Well, thanks so much for coming and tell us about your new role. I'm very excited about it. I look forward to seeing what it is, and you'll have to send some stories over to us.
It's exciting.
Yeah, very nice. So you've been listening to Build Your Best Business. I've been talking with Berry Etra. He is president of Keiretsu Forum Atlanta. And of course, you can find any information on how to go to Keiretsu and sign up and all that on their website.
KeiretsuForum.com.
KeiretsuForum.com. Until next time, what are you going to do to build your best business?